welcome to Ideagen TV live today from the Embassy of Ethiopia here in Washington, D.C. I am thrilled to have my friend, leader, luminary, Gene Accius, in person, president and CEO of Creating Healthier Communities. What an exciting time for you and creating healthier communities.
Well, George, it's always an honor to be with you. And thank you so much for this opportunity and for us to reconnect.
Gene, the honor is ours. And here we're on a global stage, as I mentioned, at the Embassy of Ethiopia. Tell us a little bit about what's happening at Creating Healthier Communities. Where are you going? Your CEO, your president, what's happening?
Well, George, first of all, thank you so much for this question. If you think about it, the most fundamental thing that we have in our life is our health. And so much of our health is really a factor in terms of exactly where we live. So in our name, Creating Healthier Communities, we are on a mission, working with business, government, nonprofits, to really ensure that every person in every neighborhood, in every community, has an opportunity to thrive and live their healthiest life. That is what we're doing. For more than 70 years, we have worked with major corporations and businesses and government to raise funds, to elevate programs and solutions to meet the needs of people across this country, particularly in the U.S., while also providing thought leadership and thought partnership with government and other entities globally. We have raised nearly $17 billion.
Wait, was that a $17 billion?
$17 billion.
Incredible.
Since we were founded more than 70 years ago. And those dollars go to helping nonprofits, helping communities across the country really be stood up and set up for success.
Incredible. And so as we think about the $17 billion, it's hard to get past that because you can only imagine the impact on communities that's been made thanks to the efforts of this incredible organization. Stakeholders. Who are your key stakeholders at Creating Healthier Communities?
So that is another excellent question. Our key stakeholder are the communities that have given us permission to join them in creating healthier communities. It is the businesses that are anchored institutions. It is the health systems that are anchored institutions. It is the community health centers. It is the nonprofit organizations in the local communities who are trying each and every single day to create an ecosystem where everyone can have an opportunity to live a longer, healthier, more productive life. If I tell you, George, particularly that we see a huge gap, both in terms of exactly how long people live and how healthy those additional years are. And that is a global trend. It's one thing to see life expectancy increase in some countries. We've seen a decline in the US by 2 years. But it's one thing to see life expectancy increase. But the question is, what is the quality of those additional years? And it doesn't matter if you're in the United States or if you are in another country, there's this gap that really impacts government. It impacts communities, it impacts businesses. And that is something that we're actually working very closely with communities in the driver's seat to solve for.
And this is a community by community initiative, right? So you're looking, not every community is the same.
That's exactly right.
But would it also be true that a lot of the lessons learned are shared and then can be applied?
That is exactly right. Every community has its own composition. And what we like to say at Creating Healthier Communities is that we need to be invited in. And then we want to co-create solutions with communities to solve their problems. And the ROI for us is, are these communities better off to solve their own problems as a result of our engagement?
Right.
Our businesses, nonprofits, health systems, other community organizations coming together in a collective fashion to identify what are the opportunities to close those social drivers of health and what are the economic implications for not doing so.
Right.
And taking those lessons from each community and being able to actually bring those ideas and those solutions and those practices and those models to scale.
So going to the global goals, at Ideagen, we are focused on those 17 global goals of the United Nations. The 17 global goals that we should note were unanimously agreed to by all 193 member states of the United Nations back in 2015. We're at the midterms, not those midterms. We're at the UN Global Goals midterms. And the midterms are a wake-up call for these global goals. Secretary Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, has recently said it's a steep hill, I believe, as he mentioned, that we're climbing to try to achieve those goals. The goals are not political, which I think allows them to be transcendental. They transcend the politics of the day, meaning doesn't matter what's happening today, the goals continue, and we're trying to get to that finish line in 2030. And so goal number 3 specifically is good health and well-being.
That's exactly right.
Good health and well-being, which is exactly where creating healthier communities sits and is focused. What do you see? What is your assessment on achieving this goal in the United States specifically?
I think we have some opportunities. And I think one of the things that we have learned and hopefully will embrace as we continue to come out of this global pandemic is the infrastructure in which we need to work in order to improve the health of every community in this country. There is a huge gap in terms of longevity, on average by 20 years. Here in Washington, D.C., where we are today, if you're a resident in Georgetown, your life expectancy is about 94 years old. If you go 6 miles down the road to Anacostia, it is 67. Think about that. In one neighborhood, your life expectancy is 94. Just 6 miles down the road, your neighbor, their life expectancy is 67. That's a nearly 30-year loss in life expectancy. And one of the things I always talk about is let's think about this for a second. What we're talking about here is lost time. Is lost time to actually connect with your friends, to watch your kids grow old, to be able to contribute back to your community, to give back into work. That also translates into the economics, in addition to the lost lives and the implications for families. We know that particularly these differences cost the U.S. government alone, if we do absolutely nothing, $1.7 billion by 2030. That's in 7 years. So in other words, these differences that we actually see stifles economic growth, and it hurts all of us. So we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to think about what are the key drivers for government, for business, for nonprofits, for community organizations to come together to rally around greater, healthier, more resilient, and more inclusive communities. Why does that matter? Because we know that a healthier community means healthier people. Healthier people means healthier workers. Healthier workers mean stronger businesses. Stronger businesses mean a more resilient and more powerful economy. Not addressing these issues actually hurts us all. So we have an opportunity, particularly to think about ways in which we are innovating, bringing ideas to scale, bringing innovations that are taking place, and that cuts across different sectors and industries.
And so as you're looking at this, it's startling to think about, you gave the Georgetown Anacostia example. I mean, it's unacceptable, really, right? I mean, it's appalling and unacceptable and all of these things at the same exact time. And so the fact that you're helping to lead the way to eliminate those disparities, those glaring disparities. And I guess the other piece is, as we're sitting here, it's apropos, we're sitting at the Embassy of Ethiopia here in Washington, again, on the global stage, and we're talking about the United States of America and the disparities that are happening from where we're sitting to 7 or 8 miles from here. That to me is appalling on so many different levels.
And we should be outraged by it. And again, I think there's 2 elements to this. There's what are the disparities within a particular country? And then what are the gaps in terms of, even if you're in a country where you're seeing greater life expectancy, that doesn't necessarily mean those additional years are spent being healthy.
Right.
And we did some work many years ago where we went around and asked people, what would you tell your 100-year-old self? Would you want to live to 100? And the key theme that came out of a lot of these conversations was, well, it depends.
It depends.
It depends on my quality of life. It depends on my ability to be able to be productive and to contribute, to be able to connect with family. It really depends. So I think that one of the things that we need to think about, and this is a global issue, is to what extent are we closing that gap between how long you live and how healthy you live? And what is the role of government? What is the role of business? And what is the role of the nonprofit sector? And really collaborating to ensure that whether you're in Ethiopia or whether you are here in the United States, that you have an opportunity to live life to the fullest.
That's right. And I want to stay on that topic, but shift to partnerships. Why, and I know you're a big fan of partnerships, but why, for our global audience and those assembled here today, why are partnerships so incredibly important to achieve your mission at creating healthier communities?
So at Creating Healthier Communities, we touch about 5,000 nonprofits on an annual basis. That's in addition to our Corporate Leadership Council, where we have more than 50 global companies engaged with us. That doesn't also include the 1,400 campaigns that we're doing across the United States with government as well as with state governments. We are engaged with 20 state governments, particularly around addressing the social barriers to health. We could not do this in isolation. I think that one of the things that has come out of the global pandemic is this need for cooperation, collaboration. One of the things this pandemic actually demonstrated is the fact that what you do in your country actually impacts me in some way. It impacts you in some way. And what we do here in the United States has global ripple implications. So as we think about the magnitude of some of the challenges that we face, the only way we're going to be able to solve some of these challenges and really accelerate our pace of change is through partnership.
That's right. That's right. And that's the key, is partnerships. That's what Ideagen stands for, is partnerships. That's why we're doubling down as we're, again, at the midterms heading into 2030.
Yes.
Because these conversations, the awareness, the impact, and that cross-sector collaboration, which is really what you're doing. You're working with businesses from across sectors and that's communities all across.
That's what I love about where we sit. We're literally at that intersection. And what I love about Ideagen, just to put an emphasis on this, is the fact that there's so much polarization, particularly in the US, and then in some cases globally, on certain topics. And what I love about Ideagen is that we need a space where people from different ideologies, backgrounds can come together and have a conversation, a civil conversation. And I think the other aspect of that too is just creating that space allows people from different backgrounds and affiliations to realize, hey, you know what, we actually might have some things that we actually agree on. And I think that whether you are conservative or liberal, Democrat, Republican, Independent, I think we can all agree on the importance of having good health, on the importance of being able to wake up in the morning, go for a walk, to ensure that your community is safe, to ensure that you have access to the best quality health care, to ensure that you have access to a range of transportation options to get to work, to be able to live your best, most optimal life. I think we can all agree on that. And I think, again, why I appreciate you and your team and the work that Ideagen is actually doing is that you're breaking through the noise, you're breaking through the other, and saying, actually, we actually have more in common if we just take the time to have a conversation.
Look, Gene, I've been in Washington for 25 years, worked in 2 White Houses, as you know, and what I've seen in Washington is that you don't last in Washington if you can't communicate, no matter what you're doing. And you're right, we have a lot more in common than being labeled as this or that. And that's where Ideagen comes in. These 17 global goals of the United Nations are so powerful because they're not political.
That's exactly right.
Because it starts with no poverty, no hunger, ends up with global partnerships, good health and well-being, empowering women and girls with gender equality. And if you flip those and you say you believe in more poverty, do you want more hunger? Do you want no partnerships? Do you want zero equality? I don't think anyone in the world agrees with that. And if they do, then we wouldn't have them here speaking, right? It's all about helping to achieve these global goals so that the world is a better place. Life is too short. There's a lot of great things happening, and we're focused on that. Great organizations and great leaders like yourself.
Thank you.
You're leading the way with class, with dignity, and with effectiveness. And we're deeply grateful here at Ideagen for all that you're doing now as president and CEO of creating healthier communities. What is your final call to action for our global audience at Ideagen?
The status quo is not sufficient, and the cost of inaction is too great. And what I mean by that is the fact that unless we become courageous enough to take the steps needed to really look and reflect on our communities, and to understand that if one community is falling short, we're all falling short, that it actually impacts all of us. And unless we're being courageous enough to actually start to be more empathetic and also create an environment that allows for greater agency, where people can be in the driver's seat of their own destinies and solving their own challenges by co-creating and co-partnering, then we will long-term not be able to achieve any of our goals.
That's right. How can folks find out more about your work in creating healthier communities?
Well, by all means, feel free to chcimpact.org. And that is actually our URL. We are in the business of impact. We are looking at exactly what is the return on investment for communities across the country, across the world, in terms of exactly, are they better off? Are they striving? Are they in a position to co-create solutions? And that every sector and industry has a role to play in elevating solutions that will ensure that people have a longer, healthier, more productive life.
Gene Accius, President and CEO, leader, luminary, friend.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, George.